Hi, this is Mike, and I'm recording this video on the 28th day of April 2024. And this is about silent or slipshod administration of oaths. Silent and slipshod are terms in the notary law. And when you administer an affidavit oath, notaries are doing it without saying anything, or they're doing it improperly. So either silent or not saying it properly if they are actually saying it out loud. So you want to avoid these penalties for doing silent or slipshod administration of an oath, which can be professional misconduct to you, which can result in a misdemeanor if they feel that you did it, as a grievous manner that you did it wrong, or a loss or suspension of your notary license and possible civil dollar damage judgments to you. Now, mistakes do happen, like whoever wrote the word mistake here mistakenly spelled mistake. Things do happen, but the law is not very forgiving if you make a mistake on a legal document. So we all make mistakes, so we need to avoid these mistakes. And you can't hear this enough times in your career as a notary because people forget about this. So just reviewing, this is taken out of the notary law. And it says in the notary law, professional conduct of the office of notary and other than the specific step-by-step procedure required is viewed as a serious offense by the Secretary of State. Remember, we're appointed under the Secretary of State Division of Licensing Service, who can take our license away and bring us up on charges. So the practice of taking acknowledgments and affidavits over the telephone or otherwise without the actual personal appearance of the individual making the acknowledgement or affidavit before the officiating notary is illegal. Now, I inserted this in red because it's not in this paragraph in the law. They need to update that because they added RON licensing law. Now, remote online or RON is considered actual personal appearance if using the approved software in New York State. And we're not going to get into the RON procedure. We're talking about administering an oath and avoiding silent or slipshod. So the attention of all notaries public is called to the following judicial declarations concerning such misconduct. The court again wishes to express its condemnation of the acts of notaries taking acknowledgments or affidavits without the presence of the party whose acknowledgment is taken for the affiant, and that it will treat serious professional misconduct the act of any notary thus violating your official duty. So yeah, you don't want to be under the magnifying glass when you make an honest mistake. And so basically, we're going to review the simplest form in which an oath may be lawfully administered. It's when you ask the question out loud to the person before you finish notarizing it. Do you solemnly swear that the contents of this affidavit subscribed by you is correct and true? So subscribe means they signed it, they read it and signed it, and you're asking them, is what you just read and signed true? They have to sign it in front of you. They can't sign it before they come to you. You have to witness them sign affidavits. And then there's case history there for those of you that want to look that up. Alternatively, the following affirmation may be used for persons who conscientiously decline taking an oath. This affirmation is legally equivalent to an oath, and it's just as binding. What do they mean, conscientiously decline taking an oath? You ask somebody, do you solemnly swear? And they go, wait a second, I don't want to swear, I don't have to. It implies that I'm swearing to a God, and that's not in my belief, so it's my right not to. And they're right. So then you have to have this alternate ready where you say to them, do you solemnly, sincerely, and truly declare and affirm? So they're not swearing to a God, they're declaring and affirming. Has the word affirm in it, so that's how you recognize it's the affirmation. The oath question always has the word swear in it, and that's your default. That's the one you do first, unless they protest it or prearrange to have an affirmation. So if they bring you one that says they're affirming, you can always administer it in this form of affirmation with the word affirm in it. So whatever the form adopted, it must be in the presence of an officer authorized to administer it. That's you, if you're one of the notaries that have been a notary in this state for like 30, 20, 10, 5, or if you're somebody studying to become a notary, you'll be the officer authorized to administer it. And it must be an unequivocal and present act by which the affiant consciously takes upon him or herself the obligation of the oath. So how do you know they're consciously taking it? They have to answer out loud after this question the word I do or the words like meaning. So they have to say I do, because you notice there's a question mark at the end of these. You're saying, do you solemnly swear that the contents of this affidavit subscribed by you is correct and true? I mean, ask it like a question when you ask them. You're asking them a question. And you would say, do you solemnly, sincerely, and truly declare and affirm that the statements made by you are correct and true? You're asking them a question, right? And then they got to answer out loud, I do or like meaning. And when they do that, you know they're consciously taking it upon themselves because they're answering the question consciously. Does that make sense? So I drew up a quick example. Affidavits can be in hundreds of thousands of different forms, but they all have certain things in common. So anytime somebody brings you one, you look for the common factors that tells you you're doing an affidavit. Usually they put a title at the top. Like for this one, I made up a fake one that says, or an example, an affidavit for wage verification / White Plains, New York apartment rental application. And I put a venue there for the person drawing up the form because they drew it up and they want the person who's signing it, which is James H. Harrod, there's a signature, they want him to say, verify his income so he can qualify for the apartment. So that means the people who are renting out the apartment in Westchester put it. So they put State of New York, County of Westchester. That's their venue, right, where they are. That's not the same as the notary venue. Down here, the notary put where the notary was at the time he met with James, and he put New York. So State of New York, County of New York. That means anywhere in the 5 boroughs, right? So it says James H. Harrod being duly sworn. So it says in there that he's swearing. Anytime they're saying there's swearing going on, you know that the notary has to use a jurat, which is the affidavit certificate, State of New York, County of, that's the venue, and then sworn to before me this 29th day of April 2024. And then the affiant signs up here, right? And then you sign here, but only after you say, do you solemnly swear that the contents of this affidavit subscribed by you is correct and true? And he must conscientiously answer I do or like meaning. I mean, what do they mean by like meaning? That means anything you accept as I do. It could be yes, I do, I swear, yo, 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 I mean it. You can take whatever you feel in your good judgment as a state officer is consciously, taking on that responsibility. Does that make sense? All right, so I just want to say another thing about the venue because I had 2 calls of people. They had forms they needed to notarize and they're existing notaries in the state, and they mess up the venue on the phone call with me. So this is where you are. This means that James appeared before you in New York County, but is Ralph, the notary public, restricted only to be notarizing in New York County? No. What if Ralph traveled to Westchester and met with the affiant John in Westchester? Then Ralph, whose stamp says qualified in New York County, would say State of New York, County of Westchester because he met with James. I said John before. James in Westchester. So the notary's venue is always where you are with the person. Don't be misled by what a notary stamp says. It says qualified in New York County. That means your address when you became a notary or recently renewed was from New York County. So that's the county you qualified in by residence, which is required, all right, generally. You can work in another state and live in New York, or you can live in New York and work in New York, or you can live in another state like Jersey and commute to New York, and a job address is enough to qualify. So where you're qualified doesn't restrict you to where you can go. Remember, a New York notary is qualified to notarize anywhere in New York State, not just the county they're qualified in by address. All right, I hope I didn't confuse you. Give me a call if you're confused by this. My phone number will be at the end of the video. All right, so serious professional misconduct can have bad outcomes for you. So you can end up going to a tribunal hearing once they bring you up on charges, and it's kind of like a court. And you can end up, if they found out you did it wrong, with suspension of your notary license, or if they thought that you really messed it up, they can just yank your license. It's up to the discretion of the tribunal hearing officer. If you did it grievously, they could even give you a misdemeanor. Usually they don't give misdemeanors for that, but they can. Like if they knew that you did it wrong on purpose, right? Or it was just really messed up what you did. Unacceptable defect can result also, means the affidavit gets thrown out, which is potential civil damages, because there's always two or more parties to an affidavit, and their lawyer might prove that you did it wrong and throw out the affidavit. And that's all a result of silent or slipshod, silent, not talking, or slipshod, messy administration of oaths. So silent, slipshod oaths are illegal in New York, whether it was an honest mistake or not. So once again, I recommend that you pause this video, write these down, type them up on your computer, print it out, and tape it into the cover of your logbook. That way, every time you open it, the journal, every notary act, you can have the affidavit question there and the affirmation question there. And the procedure here: you cannot administer the oath over a telephone. Warm body required. Affiant must not pre-sign, date the affidavit before they appear before you. Administer the oath and wait for the affiant to answer I do or like meaning, and fill out the notary parts last after they've already signed it and answered the oath I do or like meaning. So you might ask, how do you get caught? The truth of this matter is I've taught this for over 22 years in New York State. Worked in law firms, worked in insurance companies, in personal life, had to have things notarized continually, like most of you have all been to a notary. And over 50% of the time when I needed an affidavit notarized, the notary did not do it properly. They did a silent one where they just gave it to you and took ID and notarized it. So they only needed a 70% to pass their exam if they're a recently licensed notary, and maybe they missed 30% of it, and in that 30% was this procedure and they didn't know it. Or they learned it and they knew it 5, 10, or 25 or even 40 years ago. They became a notary and they forgot it, and they fell into a bad habit of doing a silent delivery. Notaries rarely get caught administering a silent oath, but I'm saying, in my experience, at least 50% of the time they are doing a silent oath, which is called slipshod or sloppy in the law, because the affiant is usually not aware of this procedure. So if the affiant, the person you're notarizing for, doesn't know and you don't know, it just gets filed and nobody know you did it wrong. So like in my case, I corrected the notaries and instructed them the correct procedure, and some of them really got mad at me and didn't want to even hear what I was saying. Maybe somebody not as nice as me would report them. So how else could you get caught? I mentioned they're notarizing the affidavit for someone who's trained as a notary public. If you have a notary and they're telling you you're doing it wrong, you should listen to them, all right? There's another error in the paperwork that you did wrong or they did wrong that triggers a hearing in court that can result in exposing something you did wrong that can get you to a tribunal hearing with the state for your license. There can be litigation between the parties of the affidavit. Anytime something gets notarized by you, there's at least two legal parties to that or more. In other words, one's the signer and one is receiving it back for their records. So if they get in an argument over something else unrelated to what you did, it can trigger a court hearing, which triggers discovery. Now, in discovery, one side's attorney might try to prove you did an unacceptable defect to undo the affidavit because it's for their advantage to their client. Maybe their client was brought up on lying under oath on their affidavit, and they want to get their client off. They're a defense attorney, so they call in the notary and try to make you prove you did it wrong to get an unacceptable defect. Then the affidavit goes away. So to have the affidavit ruled unenforceable, they might grill you as the witness for the state on the affidavit. Why? Because then their client never legally took an oath, and the person then escapes prosecution for violating the oath. So the affiant might say you never administered the verbal oath in court. They might not have remembered whether you did a silent delivery or not, or possibly the affiant will say, They can't remember. So the tribunal attorney will question you and the affiant under oath, and that's under penalty of perjury. So if you know you didn't do it properly, either you admit you broke the law or you lie under oath and say you did it properly. And you might or might not get away with that, but both of those are not good choices because you weren't doing it right to begin with, which would, it'd be committing a felony if you lie, even though you might get away with it because there's no their client didn't remember. You don't want to be in that situation. So just go ahead and write this stuff out and tape it into your journal logbook and make sure you do it properly every time. Okay, so I hope I didn't keep you too long. As usual, if anybody has any questions on this, you can always call me, Mike, at 347-427-9091, extension 1 to avoid the menu. And by the way, for those of you studying, the New York Notary exam schedules were just published for May and June, so we updated our website here. Click on Notary Exam Schedules. If you're already licensed as a notary and this month you need to get a new stamp because you renewed, every month we have new notaries renewing, go to Notary Supplies. We have discounts on there. Quick Notary Supplies service. And testimonials for those of you that need to study. See hundreds of our testimonials for our New York Notary online class to get licensed. It's all automated. It's self-paced. You have 8 months access. You can finish it in as little as 1 day and take the exam the next day, but we leave it on for 8 months because a lot of people who get licensed like to review, what they learned in that class after their license when they start notarizing. And you can join this notary association where this video is published with other discounts and other valuable information to the existing members. We have 25,000 members in the state. It's free. And for those existing notaries, you already have your basic traditional notary license as the prerequisite. You can go on to do our remote online notary class where we have software demonstrations, tell you about the procedures. After you get the license, you're not done. You have to go ahead and submit examples and proof that you're using a software that's approved by them. They don't recommend any software. You have to know what's approved or not. So we reviewed the one we think is the best and got you a 10% discount there if you want to go on. And from traditional face-to-face notary and add remote online notary services. All right, so you can always visit this website, www.howtobecomeanotaryinny.com, or give me a call, Mike, at 347-427-9091, extension 1. And please subscribe, like, comment, and share. And we'll see you in the next video. Thanks for your valuable time today.